All of you to be bold. When you look at the plans from 5, 6, 7 years ago, we don't see the amount of progress that we should have seen over that time period. And I urge all of the new council members who've come on board to be bold. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
I'd like to ask him if he can stay and listen to the presentation and perhaps be available for questions after that. Steve, can you stay and listen to the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Willie. Here in Gila, we have Tim Rees on Communication 169. Please identify yourself when you know what to do.
Good afternoon. You were correct, Tim Rees, and I'm on 169 here. Thank the gentleman for showing up and giving his input. That was important. Source point separation saves millions and millions of dollars when it comes to handling solid waste. I'm going to speak primarily on where we're at with our solid waste regarding the mulch and composting proposal that's been presented to you. I still maintain that the greatest problem for this county on actually going to composting, I'm not against composting, is recoverability of the organic compostable component. I have those numbers in front of me. They are dismal because we don't have the appropriate facility. We have a flat concrete floored 100 by 200 foot box. It's a warehouse. We have skid steers, 2 skid steers, 1 mini excavator that are trying to pull that material that they want out of the solid waste stream. So, and it's basically impossible. All they could produce, the department, in a great trial that they've been running up to today, is 1,000 tons. That is nothing. So you have to think that our mulch program is really great. Now, we had the long haul. It sounds ridiculous. I got to admit that. It sounds ridiculous to say, let's haul all our stuff over to Conaside, Putwanahulu. But remember, it's a lined landfill. I'm surprised the EPA has not forced this already. Now, looking at the long haul study, its conclusion was that it saves $50 per ton. Every single ton. That is a huge amount of money that can be saved. When that report came to the prior council, I told them, I said, now it seems like the logical next step is to see how you could get further reductions in costs and efficiencies. So now you have a proposal in front of you to go do composting, which is vastly more expensive and difficult to pull off at the Hilo facility. I'm going to give you my take on it. I would say I'm pretty much in alignment with Kelly Greenwell, and I thank him for coming forward at the last meeting. Stop looking at it as a problem and look at it as gold. If you ship all of the material over to West Hawaii, Putwanahulu, there's plenty of room for this. You have a full-blown MRF facility. You recover not only as much compostable organics as you can there, but in addition, you pick up all the plastics and other things you want to recycle. You're going to get your maximum recycling from the people that don't source point segregate by using a MRF. Unfortunately, dirty MRFs in themselves are inefficient, but that's about where you got to go with the stuff that gets tossed into the transfer station bins. At that point, the cost can be reduced so much to go to composting. The empty trucks going back to Hilo could carry compost to anybody in Hilo that wants to purchase compost at a cost of $630,000 presently, that I guarantee you could get down to $500,000 in Hilo, processing the mulches we currently do. The majority of Hilo's quickly recyclable materials would be handled very cost effectively at about $40 a ton. Currently, the bidder put higher on Hilo. It is a good reputable company, and it's about $45.
Thank you, Mr.
There's
Rees.
a lot more to go, but I'll have to abide by your rules. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that, is there anyone else who wishes to give testimony on items on the agenda today? Seeing none, statements from the public are now closed. Mr. Clerk, actually, before we get into this, I want to just check with my fellow council members, because we got 2 communications on here. One's a discussion, and one is the bill for the collection of solid waste fees. The discussion's currently first on the agenda, which we don't know how long that's actually going to go, and I'll have to cut it off at a certain point to give us enough time for the collection of fees. We could start with the collection of fees, get through that, and then leave the remainder of the committee meeting open to see how that discussion goes. So does anybody object?
I would just like to check if Mr. Holmes can stay for this period, because otherwise I would like him to be present present for the,
Mr. Holmes, will you be present for the next hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes?
Yes, I'll stick around. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Is there any objection from Dora? Are you guys okay with that? It's all related to your guys' department, so. Okay.
Is there-
Very good. So no objections from that. Okay, with that, Mr. Clerk, will you please read in Communication 181, Bill 44?
Communication 181, Bill 44, amends Chapter 20, Article 4, Section 20-47 of the Hawaii County Code 1983, 2005 edition as amended relating to collection of fees. From Council Member Zendo Kern dated March 5th, 2013. The bill establishes new payment methods for commercial haulers and reduces the grace period before which a finance charge is implemented from 60 days to 30 days for all overdue collections of solid waste fees. Postponed March 27, 2013. Note, there is a pending motion to refer Bill 44, Communication 181, to the Director of the Department of Environmental Management and the Environmental Commission for review and comment pursuant to Hawaii County Code Section 2-207.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. With that, since this is my bill and we're going to get into discussion of this, I will be relinquishing my chair for this communication to the Vice Chair, Mr. Kanuha.
Make it known that I've assumed the chair and will... Where are we? Hold on.
Discussion.
Yeah. So is there any discussion? Mr. Kern?
Yes, thank you very much. So I know that there's some amendments in here. We'll get to that obviously here in a second. I just want, the intent of this bill is to close the loophole, if you will, right now, that commercial haulers at the end of the day, if they don't want to pay, they don't have to. If they want to continue to haul, they do have to, but there's not enough constraints in there. There's no collateral, there's no personal accountability from the personal standpoint or the business standpoint. So what we're aiming to do here, again, is to make sure that it's either, one, pay as you go, or two, whatever, each commercial hauler has to collateralize their average tipping fee by 1.5 times. That can be by cash, bond, cashier's check, or some other type of security deposit. So at the end of the day, if the hauler does not pay, the county of Hawaii is not out that money. We can go and take that money and utilize it, and then that's the commercial hauler's responsibility to come back in and try to get correct. But right now we're out over $2 million, 90 days past due, and this has to stop, and this is a way that this will never happen again. Let it be clear that this is not a bill to collect past due fees. This bill is to stop this from happening again. With that, I'm looking forward to some discussion. So with that, I'll yield.
Ms. Ford?
Thank you. I would direct the council's attention to Communication 181.2 that was just delivered to you. I really like Mr. Kern's bill, but I wanted to explain to the council my history as retired from a public utility, and I want to go one step farther to make sure that the outstanding balances get paid pretty fast. So let me give you a little history. I worked for Pacific Bell, the biggest telephone company in California. And when I first started as a very, 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 very young woman, I did bill collections. And one of the things that we did there, and this was all under the auspices of the California Public Utilities Commission, which is the toughest PUC in the country, the toughest. And they're totally consumer-oriented. They don't care about us as long as we make a profit, but the consumer comes first. However, when someone didn't pay their bill, not only did we cut them off, their telephone service off, they had warning, they got called, they got written notices, and they didn't pay in time, and we cut them off. Same thing that we should be doing here. We should be denying access to our landfills, as Mr. Kern has indicated in his bill. The other thing, though, that we did is you had to pay if you got your phone cut off, you had to pay a security deposit equal to 1 month's average billing for the last 12 months. That deposit, at the time I was collecting the bill, was retained for 12 months, and the client had to pay the bill on time for 12 consecutive months, and only then was the security deposit returned without interest. I think they pay interest now, but I wouldn't swear to that. I've been gone a long time. So I've added that in here. The people need to have to face up to their financial responsibilities. And so I want to amend Bill 44 with the contents of Communication 181.2.
Second.
Thank you. So I've reworded what Mr. Kern wrote in a couple of places, but it's pretty much copy what he did. However, in B, I added each billing statement shall identify the 30th day when the payment is due. I don't know if that already exists, but I wanted to make sure it was in the code. A lot of this is just formatting changes because when you get down to E, this is the big deal. If the commercial hauler is unable to make timely payments during the preceding 12 months, timely payments means everything on the account. That doesn't mean you get to drag 2 years' worth of back payments. You got to pay it off. You got to be clean. The commercial hauler shall make a security deposit equal to the average monthly billing for the previous 12 months. And this subsection will take place 90 days after approval. That way, they've got 90 days to clear their bills. It goes on and said, we'll hold it for 12 months while they reestablish their credit rating by paying timely for 12 months, and that means everything. If they are late or they miss a payment, the security deposit is automatically applied to the bill to try to zero it out. There may be something left over, but it's up. And then they're still restricted. They can't use the site until they produce a security deposit in the amount that is necessary. If they don't do that or they get cut off more than one time, then they're going to be charged a 2-month security deposit. We will never go more than 2 months, subject to the approval of council, of course. That way, they should never be more than 1 month in arrear without getting denied access to the landfill and completing all payments. So that once this bill passes, if the council agrees, then they've got 90 days to clear their bill completely. And if they don't, they're going to be putting down a security deposit. And first of all, they'll be denied access to the landfill. And then when they want to access again, they will have to pay the deposit and maintain a clean payment record for 12 months. There will be no interest paid on the security deposit. And any interest that the county makes from the security deposit will be retained by the county as a processing fee, and it won't be much because the rates right now on interest is terrible, so it won't be much. I would like to call Ms. Beck Ford at this time. And while she's coming forward, Ms. Beck, I sent you a bill that went farther than this on some other issues. The LRB advised me that it didn't match the title of the bill, so I've made it a separate bill that'll be coming down the pipeline here shortly. But I wanted to get your comments on the security deposit aspect of Mr. Kern's bill.
Good afternoon, Dora Beck, Acting Director. As far as a security deposit, I don't see any issues with that. I mean, it's done with most utility companies that I'm familiar with, and it's a way of, when somebody is not paying or late, that's where you draw from.
That's right.
So I certainly don't have an issue with
right.
that, as long as it's applied fairly.
And that's up to your department,
right.
and I would fully expect fairness. Mr. Torgoy, can I ask you to come forward? At the last meeting, I had, preceding that meeting, asked Mr. Torgoy a series of questions. You all got a copy of that document. Basically, I wanted to see if there was anything in Hawaii state law that precluded us from doing this, and he could not find anything that said we couldn't do this. The one concern that I have, Mr. Torgoy, and I'm willing to amend this amendment, is the 2 months average deposit for the security deposit. 1 month is really, 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 really easy to justify to anybody. I wanted to check with you if you thought 2 months would be excessive.
Thank you. Ivan Torgoy, Deputy Corporation Counsel. At this point,
All right, turn him up.
That seems to be within the range of what is reasonable.
Okay. Thank you. I did not want to go beyond reason. And the thing is, if they're behind and they get cut off, they pay their bill up, they pay their security deposit, and they're naughty the second time, I feel that they should have, this would, let's see, what's the word I want to use? This would incent them to never do it again. That's the whole point, is to get them to pay on time and not do these things. And if they do, then they're going to have to pay more. I specifically remember a conversation with one of the commercial haulers that was making all of their payments timely, and they said, I'm going to paraphrase this, they said, why should the taxpayers be subsidizing somebody who won't pay their bills when we're paying our bills and we could pick up their customers? You know, you're preventing us from getting new customers because you're subsidizing this guy, you're not subsidizing us. To me, that's not fair. And I want everybody to pay their bills in a timely manner, so I would support doing a security deposit. They got 90 days, if 90 days is the will of the council, to clean up all their past dues and be ready with that security deposit on the 91st day, or otherwise they're not going to get into the landfills. I sent to Dora a bill that went quite a bit farther than this, not on security deposits, on other issues, and because LRB said it didn't match the title, it will be coming down to us probably in another month. It'll be down here in front of us, and it's another incentive, shall we say, to get them to pay these bills. Thank you.
Mr. Kern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ford, I like quite a few of the amendments that are in here. I do feel when it gets to Section E that my language in my bill is actually stronger. I don't believe that the county should be giving credit at all. There should be no credit extended, and when we have basically a billing cycle that allows a hauler to take their time to pay, even with interest on it or being turned away from the landfill, that's still allowing credit. My bill is only one of two options. Either pay as you go, or if you want to haul and have be billed, whatever your monthly haul is, let's just say that's 20 tons, the hauler has to put down 1.5 times that amount. So whatever the amount would be for the 20 tons, they would have to basically have collateral in the amount of the 30-ton haul. That is on hold. That sits there. We hold that. We can collect interest on it. That sits there for the life of that hauler, and it could be through a bank security deposit, cash, some type of security. It doesn't have to just be cash. If the hauler then increases their monthly haul, we have to take a look. The department have to take a look at that and say, hey, now you're running 40 tons every month. You have to put a new security deposit down of 60 tons worth. So I don't feel that we should be doing it that if you mess up, then you have to put down a security deposit. If you mess up again, then you have to put down a bigger security deposit. I think it should just be security deposit right from jump, or pay as you go. That way there's no gray area. It is what it is. It's a cost of doing business, and it protects the county of Hawaii. We're not a bank. We're having really tough, economic times right now. I would like to do anything we can, and my belief is that for any hauler that will need to get onto this program, they're going to have to get current anyways. They're going to have to just to participate with this. So I feel that my language is stronger than yours in E. I like the other stuff. Moving down cleans things up. No problem with that. But let's be strong. Let's put it out there and say this is what it is. So I'd like to hear any feedback from anybody else, but I would like to take that part out and keep in the language that I have because it is stronger. And I would love to get some feedback. So with that, I'll yield.
Ms. Ford?
Is it in E? Is it in the first paragraph, this subsection shall take effect 90 days that you're having a problem with, or just the amount of the security deposits, which you call collateral?
My issue is that the way that I read this is that they don't have to put down collateral until they're late.
That's true.
And I just want to say it doesn't matter if you're late, if you're on time, whatever it is, collateral's down. We never have this problem.
Okay.
That's my
All right.
That's my thing.
Mr. Torgoy, could I ask you to come forward? I'm having a little bit of an issue with that, and the reason is if somebody is currently a commercial hauler and they're paying their bills in a timely manner, they're being penalized for what somebody else is not doing. And that bothers me. That's, I guess it's my past public utilities experience. If you're paying your bills on time, why should you have a security deposit? The other problem that I have is I don't like forever deposits. We are locking up their money at no interest rate forever. And I'm having an issue with that mentally. That doesn't mean that I'm right or you're wrong or anything. Those are my issues. Mr. Torgoy, let me start with the second one first. Holding a security deposit forever. What is your take on that as an attorney?
Ms. Porter, first of all, let me just say that I think if we're talking about the specifics of some legislation that may have some legal consequences, the details are best discussed in executive session.
Oh,
okay.
God.
But let me just say that I think when you look around out there are some utilities that do that sort of thing. And I think, security deposits are held very long term for housing, other things. Of course, there are other provisions that may apply to housing, but I think there's some precedent out there for holding long-term security deposits.
Okay. What about requiring a security deposit of somebody who's had a perfect payment record or close to perfect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I think there are some examples out there of that being done, basically to secure the government's interests from the get-go. I think there are some examples of that being done where security deposits are generally required.
Okay. I'm feeling a little pain for the guy that's not causing a problem. So I'd like to hear from Mr. Kern.
Go right ahead, Mr. Kern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to respond to, I agree, if somebody is making their payments on time and they're doing good business, that this is going to be maybe a little bit of an issue for them at the beginning. But I want to make it clear that they don't actually have to put down cash. If they're running a good business, the bank can cover them through some type of bank line of credit that's held there, a bond, some other type of security. So a business that's running well I don't think this would actually be a negative to them, and they're not going to necessarily have to come out with cash. There's other ways that they can collateralize it or put a security deposit down on it. And if we're going to do it for one, we have to do it for all. And once it's in there, it'll never happen. And just who knows? There could be a company that's running really, really great right now. Oh, they're doing fine. And a year from now, they have financial troubles, and they owe us $100,000, and we didn't have this, and they skip out of town. Then we're again holding the bag. So I feel that this should be across the board.
I see you off. Thank you. You want to turn on your mic?
Mr. Kern, but how does it punish those who are timely? Because doesn't it say, isn't there an or in there? Commercial haulers shall either pay at the time of depositing or, if they're not behind, then do they still have to put down collateral? Or is that only when you've fallen behind?
Yes, may I ask a question? Yeah, no, this would be across the board. Any hauler that wants to use our landfill to dump has to have their tipping fees collateralized and secured.
Are you finished, Ms. Yell? Ms. Willie?
Yes, thank you, Zendo, for bringing this forward. I'm inclined at this point to go with what Ms. Ford saying, and almost as an incentive and encouragement that if people do well, that they are given a break, that we reward those who are on time and run their business. In terms of getting bank credit and that, I think we're just adding a level of complexity to someone's business that I know I'm down on the level of little business, and not bringing in a bank or bringing in something just seems like a big deal to me, and unnecessary, up until they've done something wrong. So I just think it would be good to reward those who are on time and who have been responsible. Thank you.
Mr. Lagon.
I hear Councilmember Ford, and when I'm reading through your amendment, I'm seeing that, any commercial hauler misses a payment or is late on a payment, they would have to apply that security deposit. And then, let's say a year after they only made that one mistake, and then a year after they started making consent on your, it looks like E3, the security deposit without interest shall be returned to the commercial hauler only after 12 consecutive months of timely payments. So what I'm seeing is money from back handled from the commercial developer hauler and to the division, and then back to the hauler, then back to the division. I'm seeing that, and I'm actually in favor just on E. I like the rest of your language, and changing up to Councilmember Kern's C of the original document, and I'm more in favor in setting a security deposit right in the initial, and then just like what Councilmember Kern said, you never know what might happen in the future, and just having that security there and not having to move that funds back and forth, because I feel like if we do that, then it will actually burden the division where they have to handle that money, and I feel like this is a way easier transition, and it's right there, right in the beginning. Thank you.
Mr. Onishi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is to Dora. I did send you some questions, right, and for you to answer, and then one of them was, would your department have the capabilities to enforce these amendments? And your response was?
Yes, Councilmember Onishi, I did get that email with the questions on it. And you did have a question on enforcing, and my response was, at this time, the department will not have the resources or capability of enforcing the licensing aspect as described in Bill 44. So I was specifically focused on the licensing, but I believe Ms. Ford's comment was that she would need to revise that part of the bill, and may I respond to both of them on that?
Well, you can continue, because all I was going to say is that maybe if you can, we can have more discussion, but let's postpone this, and then you can be working with the department and getting these amendments redone.
Ms. Ford, real fast.
Real fast. I already wrote the ordinance change for licensing of the commercial haulers. All I had to strip it off of this bill because it did match the title, and I've already sent it through LRB. It's in process right now.
Okay.
And Dora has a copy of it because it was my original thing.
Okay. And then also, for your department, your staff, to have this deposits being collected, you folks would have the resources to do that?
That could be an issue. Any form of collections of fees, cash, especially cash, checks, anything like that does impact the staff. In what way? At this point, I don't know. But certainly, additional staff would be required. Methods would have to be implemented, procedures. So those are the kinds of impacts that we would be looking at.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and then I guess in the past with the other councils before, when they implemented, other, I guess, one was about like doing these signs and so for PNR to post up the no smoking signs, and the council required them to do it, but they never provided funding for PNR to purchase the signs, right? So it would have to come up from their budget. So basically, if this would happen and we pass the council, I mean, it's like your department would have to be the one to find that resource or find that staff to do the work, correct? Whereas if this was added, if funding was added in there for an extra person to do this, that would help you out, right?
Any funds to support procedures or staff would have to come out of the budget.
Right, out of your budget.
Out of our budget, correct.
But then now, if in here would also include where there's a funding source to help supplement in a position for this, to do this work, then you'd be okay with that.
That'd be wonderful if there was some other source of funds.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Yoshimoto, real fast. Real fast, but go right ahead.
First opportunity, Mr. Chair.
I know.
Thanks for trying, though. No. I have a question for Mr. Kern, if that's okay. Mr. Kern, you in your drafting of this bill, well, my question is this. When you're talking about the security deposit or whatever term you want to use, what are we looking at? Because there seem to be a lot of small commercial haulers, too. So I know you mentioned the percentage of tonnage, but in real-world numbers, what are we talking about?
The real world numbers of exactly what those amounts are, they're going to range from somebody who's small who's doing 20 tons and it might be a security deposit of $5,000. It could be somebody that's doing a lot of business and it could be a security deposit of $200,000. It's gonna range based on what their haul is. I did get this info or this concept from another county in the mainland that this is what they were doing, and they were able to do it as either cash, bond, or some type of bank security. On average, what the exact dollar amount is, I think that might be a better question for the department.
Okay, well, because I remember, I guess maybe in the past, we were given that information as far as haulers that were delinquent in payments and things like that. I'm just trying to remember from my memory. So I guess it was in the past. I think Ms. Ford, remembers somewhere along the same lines, I think, as far as people being delinquent and how far behind. Ms. Ford, do you have any comment on my question?
I remember that Ms. Beck came forward, seems like 2 years ago, and gave us a report on how delinquent people were. But I don't remember the exact numbers at this point in time. I think Ms. Beck would be better. I'm going to...
Ms. Beck, any comment just on the question? I just want to get some appreciation as to what are we talking about, 20 haulers, 50 haulers, the size, and what effect the proposed legislation would have on them.
Well, first of all, in response to Ms. Ford's guess that it was 2 years ago, I wasn't here in this position 2 years ago, so it probably wasn't me. I think the question being asked is, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I would, if you can answer the question, what amount of money are we looking at in terms of the deposit that we're going to be requiring with this legislation? I know it's a percentage, right? But I'm asking, is there 10 small haulers and 5 big ones, or is there? What is the breakdown?
I think what you're asking for is like a general rule of thumb as to the size of the deposit as related to the business.
Right, and that's what Mr. Kern's legislation is. So, in other words, if you go further down analyzing the question becomes, can they do it? Because if they're a big firm, I would presume they'd have more financial capabilities. If they're a small mom and pop kind of a thing, they'd have a harder time. So that's what I'm alluding to. But in getting there, I'm just trying to see if there's a number that we can all appreciate.
My feeling is that, yes, the bigger size commercial haulers will be able to foot that that cost. The smaller ones will be more difficult to do that. As far as a typical cost, at this point, boy, yeah, I can't even venture to guess
That's
what,
okay. Yeah.
without further doing some research as to what's reasonable. I don't want to throw
Yeah,
out some
'cause-
number that's outrageous.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, because I remember those numbers being provided to us. I just don't have the numbers in front of me. That kind of gave a breakdown as to, these haulers have, an accounts receivable of so much and things like that. But I guess that's something that, anyway, I'll go look up the numbers. I think we have it somewhere in our office, so I'll do that. Well, actually, maybe that's something if you could provide to us, because we would need current numbers rather than stuff from in the past. Yeah. Okay.
Not by name of company, by numbers.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Ilagan?
Director, thank you for coming. My question is, now, since we talked about the amount, I just wanted to, actually, first let me get this cleared. On the haulers that uses our landfill, a majority of them, are they larger or are the majority of them smaller? What's the breakdown, like percentage-wise? In other words, first let's define what's a large hauler. How many tonnage per month would a large hauler be?
I'd like to call it Robin Bauman, our business services manager. She might be able to provide a better answer than I could on that one.
Please state your name and your title, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Robin Bauman. I'm the business manager for the department. Our haulers range in size greatly, from very small to we have some that would generate up to, maybe $500,000 per month in tipping fees. So they vary widely.
My question regards with, let's say with tonnage per month. A large hauler, you said, how much per month would they actually haul? Let's go with the smaller ones. Smaller haulers, how many tons per month do they haul?
I really don't have any data on that. That's not something I've looked at, recently.
Gotcha.
How much tons, but
gotcha.
It really is a full range from very little, maybe a few tons a month, and it depends on how you define, a commercial hauler. If you're looking at only refuse haulers, it's probably a little more, but you also have commercial businesses that haul refuse regularly as part of their business, and that can be more sporadic in terms of their volume. If you've got a contractor, 1 month they may not have many jobs, and the next month they may have a big job, so their volumes can vary widely from month to month.
I see. So what you're trying to say is that maybe in January they had a big job, by in October they had nothing. And now looking at this, it says the amount of collateral required shall be determined by multiplying the number of tons per month by 1 and 1/2 times the per ton solid waste disposable charge. What I was trying to think about was how to help out the little guys, and maybe we could break it down to where if they don't haul as much, I don't see, the thing is we need to somehow categorize the smaller haulers, and I was trying to think of a formula that would be lower, a smaller deposit, and then the larger haulers would actually have this formula. That's what I was trying to go with. So it would be breaking down the original language that Councilmember Kern has on C2 into 2 parts, where we are more, it's a smaller amount of deposit for the smaller haulers and a reasonable amount for the larger haulers. That's the idea that I'm trying to bring up. For the staff, I was thinking about it. This really, I wouldn't think it would really impact the staff, because right now, currently, without any of this, the commercial haulers that is not paying, nothing is being done. But initially, I would assume that the initial part, like once this comes into effect, they would have a lot of paperwork, but once that initial phase goes through, I think it would kind of phase out. Would that be a bad guess, or Director?
Well, collection of monies, it's an ongoing thing, so I don't know that it would get easier as time goes on. I mean, it'll reach a point where you've got a procedure in place and you just have to keep exercising that procedure.
What I'm trying to say is that we do have a collection already in play, and they are already collecting those funds, and we're just trying to make sure that the added thing would be trying to collect. I just feel like initially it would be a humbug with paperwork, but after the initial deposit, once we get all that initial deposit, then I feel like it's gonna ease with the paperwork. That's my opinion. But I feel like we don't really need to add more staff. I feel like the collection agency is there already in place. It's just the initial phase, once this is actually put into law, would cause that humbug. But once all the security deposits have been collected, then I feel like it's gonna be easier in a way.
The collections clerk is focused on the delinquencies, and this collection of fees, that would be receivable, so that's something different. Robin's sitting up here, so maybe she can provide some comment as to whether on the additional staffing.
Yeah, I would agree with you that initially there's a lot more work, which would, subside a little over time. However, this would increase the workload in terms of, monitoring the deposits. Do they need to be adjusted from time to time as businesses grow or shrink and their volumes go up and down? We need to determine how that would be adjusted and when. Also, if they choose to pay as they go, that's, additional time processing each transaction that comes across the scale to tender payment.
I see what you're trying to say. Now, do you think if this was implemented, would we gain more revenue in that department, or will it actually hinder more commercial haulers? In other words, let's say I'm just throwing out imaginary numbers, but let's say there's 10 haulers right now using, and they're not paying, and they're still using our resources. Now, let's say we implement this and we get their deposit. Does it increase the amount of haulers, or does it decrease the amount of haulers? And in other words, will this help out with our revenue source, or will it create more delinquencies? Or not really delinquencies, more, will it stop more commercial haulers? What do you think?
It's hard to say, potentially if haulers who are struggling now are not able to comply with these revisions, they could potentially go out of business, so you might have less haulers. Another hauler would probably pick up their business.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm sorry that I kind of rambled on.
Mr. Kern? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Beck, how much are we past due right now? How much are we owed currently? Not the 90 days and beyond, but in total right now. Just could be close.
The total, I believe the last number I saw, Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was a little over 2 million.
I believe the amount, and I don't have that with me, the amount over 90 days past due for solid waste was around 1.5 million, maybe a little more.
Last time we spoke, this is a little while back, so things might have changed a little bit. It sounded like it was close to, we're owed about 4 million-ish right now in total, and then about 1.5 to 2 million of that is 90 days past due.
That sounds to me more the combination of our sewer fees and solid waste fees.
Okay, so
the
90 days past due, we're at about $1.5 million right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
possibly a little more.
And how much resources do we have going to collect that right now?
We have a credit and collection clerk. We have a senior account clerk that does the monthly billings. And we have the assistance of corporation counsel, who we can refer our larger accounts to pursue lawsuits.
And if the company decides that they don't want to pay, what is our ultimate recourse?
If they are delinquent, we start the process of denying their access to the landfill, and we can pursue legal recourse at that point.
Can we pursue legal recourse on them personally, or is it just tied to their business? So ABC LLC.
That depends on the type of business.
Yeah.
Depends on their type of business.
Okay. Because I think that if we didn't have, if we already had this in place, we wouldn't be out there with attorneys, collections agencies, everything else, trying to collect $1.5 million. We'd be $1.5 million. We'd be flush right now. We'd have that money right now. It'd be easier time getting things done in our department, which that person that resource that we're currently paying for right now could actually be dealing with security deposits, collections, making sure that, not even collections because we won't be in collections anymore, just making sure that everything is current on that. So there might be a little bit of pain getting to that point, but the reality of it is that these people could walk away from this money and we would not get paid. We are not in the business as a county to finance people. I am very pro small business. That's where I grew up, entrepreneur all the way. I'm a small business person. And it's huge for the Big Island to have small business. But as a county, we're taxpayers' money. We can't be the bank. Right. So for the small haulers, I understand that there's a concern with small haulers. Well, you have one option is pay as you go. And what the small hauler would have to do, if they didn't want to collateralize it, is get a credit card. Now that credit card, $5,000, $10,000 credit card, is used as they go through, swipe the card, pay as they go, in and out, and now they're financing their business through a bank, through a credit card company, not us. That's my point, is that this has to stop. We cannot be $1.5 million in the rears and not have it tied to collateral, cashier's checks, bonds, homes, automobiles, assets. It's not tied to that. So we are, at the end of the day, we will come up short. This will stop that. It's not going to collect all that. That collection still needs to occur. And the small haulers do have the option, as I say, pay as you go, get a credit card, you get a secured credit card. There is flexibility in there. I do not want to, the intent of this is not to shut businesses down. The intent is to make sure that we are being business-minded and savvy as a county. Again, we are not a bank, and that's why something like this has to go into play. I don't think doing it only after they've been bad or haven't done it is actually going to work. And then we have this back and forth. Okay, you've been good for a month. Things change. Climates change. I've talked to people in business. Things are great. Every year we're growing 20%, no problem whatsoever. See them 3-4 years later, went bankrupt. We'd be out. We can't do that. That's the whole point. That's why we are in the rears right now. So with that, I will yield. I do not just to be clear, I do not support E. I like the rest of the amendments. That's fine. I think to take E out, put back in C in there would be strong. So with that, I will yield.
Ms. Ford, I think you were next.
I don't think Valerie spoke yet.
Okay. Ms. Poindexter.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Kern. If the small businesses cannot even afford to get a credit card because they wouldn't be able to pay as you go or don't have the credit, then they're not a viable company and we would lose in the long run anyway. So I'm agreeing with what Councilmember Kern is saying, is that we should put that in place, and the small businesses will have to, pay as you go. And if let the credit card companies or somebody be able to take that, for them to take that responsibility. Because if they're unable to do it and they're a small business, then that means they're not a viable business anyway, and we would lose in the long run. So I'm supporting what Councilmember Kern is saying. Thank you.
Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I could live with Mr. Kern's suggestion on the amendment to the amendment, but I would like to say one thing. This is just me. I don't like putting security deposits on people who pay their bills on time. For me, it's the same thing as all of us who own houses. If the county said you're going to have to pay 1 full year's property taxes in advance, this is a security deposit, and we will hold it forever in case you go into foreclosure. We would never have anything in arrears, it's true. But at the same time, those of us who pay our bills religiously never run into any problems with anybody. We're being penalized for the bad behavior of others. And I'm having discomfort over that. I can live with what you're saying, but I am having discomfort over that. I just want to say that.
Mr. Chair, could I address that one question? Because there's a distinction between, I understand the property tax side of it. The difference is the property tax situation, it's collateralized.
Yes, I understand.
We don't pay it.
We get their house.
Right, or the land, which isn't what we want to do, but there is recourse. We will not, we're not going to lose on that level.
You have a valid point.
I do want to be reasonable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me think some more.
Ms. Eoff.
Thank you. And is the pay on the pay-as-you-go, like using the credit card, is that preferred by the department as well? Because maybe that would be the incentive, rather than have to give collateral, haulers would have this option. That's what I was trying to ask Mr. Kern before, but I think I didn't ask the question right. It seems like there is an or there, so you don't have to give collateral if you're willing to pay as you on the spot, and you can use a credit card. And I'm thinking maybe that would solve two issues. If you are current and you're in good standing, you're not having to give collateral, and it may also help the department with the billing process with less bills to worry about if people are paying with their credit card. So I'm just wondering if that is preferred.
I think the credit card is fine because basically we get paid by the credit company, and whatever, if they're late, that's between them and the credit card.
And then you don't send a statement, right? I mean, they're not, or are they still part of it? So I'm thinking that maybe this is the solution here, is to amend Brenda's, Ms. Ford's amendment to put Mr. Kern's C back in. And I guess I'll make that motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we have a little more discussion?
Yes. Okay, I'll withdraw that. But I just thinking about it.
Mr. Kern.
I just wanted to make a comment on that. If we're going to go down that road, I'm going to have John do that. I'd like to make it clear, just introduce a new amendment, and it would actually come out starting at, we would remove D, and then from my C would turn into the D.
You want to take out D? I thought that was a lot more clear than your run-on paragraph.
I do too. I just got, this is coming from the back desk, if you will, to make it clean. And I can look into that after.
Yeah,
that's
we
fine.
can put this aside for a second. I would like to ask a credit card question, though, of Dora.
I'm gonna go with Mr. Ilagan
Oh, sure.
first.
When Councilmember Ayoff mentioned pay-as-you-go, you said, Ms. Baumann, that if the haulers take that approach, will it backlog the system? Will it?
I don't know, what kind of wait times they have right now. I mean, it would take a little bit longer to process each transaction as they come across the scale. Will that be any significant impact to the traffic pattern? I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, the reason why I wanted to talk is because I fight for the small businesses, and I want to make sure that they have this opportunity to run their business and because the thing too, we have to look at the price to do business. And I really want to break down the C into where the small business have a lower security deposit compared to the big haulers who can afford it. I understand that it's one of those things where if they can't secure the credit now, then they might not succeed as a business. But the thing is, I feel like we have to give them a chance. With small businesses, I see a lot of small businesses where they're not given that opportunity because the initial part is just too much and they can't afford it. And I want to fight tooth and nail for the small businesses, and I want to make sure that they have that opportunity rather than be shut out because the security deposit is just too high. I just want to voice that out.
Ms. Willie.
I would agree with Councilmember Ilagan. I mean, it's really that this is an activity that we want to encourage. We want to encourage startup businesses and often, and not just have it the big guys, but it is a whole area of solid waste. So I'm not sure why, if you want to have some small deposit just so you sort of have people in the system somehow. But I, again, support Councilmember Ford's not having anything while you're doing, unless there's a problem, or else something minimal. I really agree with I don't want to restate the reasoning of Councilmember Ilagan. I'm going to vote whatever way. I appreciate what Councilmember Karen Eoff said as well. I think that this is a business we want to encourage. We want young people. It's something that people can do without having a lot of letters after their names, and professionals, and encourage them to get into it and start up. So whatever we can do to minimize those startup costs for businesses that we encourage, I support. Thank you.
Ms. Poindexter?
Yeah, I definitely support small businesses. That's not why I'm saying what I'm saying, but we have to, understand too, they're getting paid by the person that they're picking up what they're putting down at the landfill. So they're getting paid for it. And they're only going to be putting a deposit based on, if the language is based on how much they're putting in the landfill, right? So it's based on that, and they're getting paid for doing it already. So they have the revenue to be able to put this forth. So it's not when you're talking about the bigger companies, they're getting more money and they're dropping off more waste. So yes, they pay more. So it's fair across the board. So you cannot, to me, that's kind of like we're trying to discriminate here. We just need to be fair on what our methodology is. So, thank you.
Mr. Onishi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I remember back then when we got in, we found out that it was like, these haulers was owing like $4 or $6 million or something, and then that's where you folks started, I guess, kind of, getting that person to do the collections, because I think at one time you folks didn't have a position, right, or wasn't filled and so forth. And then that's when I think Ivan kind of got involved to try and, I guess, tweak the law or try to tweak how, I guess, the process would be, so that way the haulers can get away from not paying. So what I'm hearing now is like 1.5 million is being owed to the county.
That is about the amount of the receivables that are over 90 days. The total receivables is a little more than that. It's probably about maybe 2.5 million.
Okay, and so how has that process that you folks, from like 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, in trying to collect from all these delinquent haulers, how has that been working?
Well, we've been denying access regularly now, and so that's stopped some of the bleeding.
But these days they didn't pay for it, right?
Yeah, there's still, outstanding debts that have not been paid that we're trying to collect. But that has helped to prevent additional debts from.
And so, Ivan, do you folks go to court to go and collect from these people?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes.
Please respond.
Yeah, Ivan Torrio, Deputy Corporation Counsel. Yeah, there are cases which are referred over to the Department of Corporation Counsel, and there are lawsuits that are filed on those cases.
And about roughly how much money is that being recovered?
So I would have to defer to the business manager on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have those figures with me, but I believe the total amount of the lawsuits that were filed were a little over $1 million. Some of those we have been collecting on or have stipulated judgments where the debtor is making regular payments. Some of them we will not be able to collect.
Okay, and because with my email that I sent to Dara to, I guess, Dara, you mentioned something about that, I guess, owners or these companies, sometimes they change their names.
Yeah, there is that problem of companies who are delinquent, and then all of a sudden they shut down their business and they surface as a new company in order to avoid paying an old debt.
And so, like, when they apply, or do they have to apply with the department in order to I guess, to drop off their deposit of trash to you folks?
Yes, they have to apply for a landfill disposal permit.
And then, so how do they get around by, I guess, like, they changing the name or changing, like, the ownership of the, I guess, the applicant? They might put, like, now their wife's name or something. Is that what they do?
Or they may form a new corporation.
Okay, so listening to discussion right now, I mean, it seems like there's still a problem about collecting these fees, right? We all can admit that, right? Mm-hmm. So from the department side, what would be a good remedy that we can enforce, or we can, with council approval for you folks to enforce, where we can stop that bleeding?
Well, at this point, we're talking to our Collections Corporation Council on various solutions, and that discussion is still ongoing. So unless, Robin, if there were any specific solutions.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's a number of things that could be done. What is the best solution? That's kind of what we've still been discussing.
Okay. Because I remember one time when Dara, you said something about, I guess I'll figure what issue was, but you said talking needs to stop and we got to start doing things, right? And I forget what was on subject was about DEM and
It's about the landfill.
I think so, yeah. Instead of just talking about what we need to start doing. It seems like the same problem that, like I said, for over 4 years now that I've been on the council, we still having that same problem, and it's like you folks are still in the discussion with Corp Council and finding out what's the solution. I think we need to start moving forward, and you guys can let us know as a council what enforcement you guys want to see. We pass the ordinance so that way we folks have the power to do things. And I think that's where we got to start going already. Yeah, because it's 2.5 million that we could be using for other things, right? So maybe if you can work more closely with Councilmember Kern and get things going, because it seems like you folks are not really in agreement to this Bill 44. You folks need to have more time to look it over.
We need to have more time. I didn't say we were in disagreement.
Okay.
I just said we need to have more time.
Okay, so maybe after.
Sorry, turn yours off.
Okay, but after maybe more after more discussion, maybe then we can postpone this, and then Councilmember Kern can work with you folks, and get this thing going.
Also, I want to add that a lot of the solutions involve code changes, so that's what also needs to be taken into consideration. So it's not as if you can think of some concepts and then magically overnight be able to do it. So that's the other thing that takes thought is working on the code changes, which we will be bringing forward to council in the next couple months after we run it by the Environmental Management Commission.
Okay. But even you folks run it through the commission. I mean, I've talked to members on that commission, and they're saying that they don't really have any power. It's basically up to the department director and the mayor. So, but I just wanted to put that out.
Well, any changes to ordinance, and this is via, according to Ordinance 12-114, we need to run it by the Environmental Management Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Onisha. I just want to remind the council that we will have a presentation after this that was requested for 90 minutes, so I want to kind of get this rolling. And Mr. Kern.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do too. I think we should just move to postpone here in a minute and work on this. But just so it's clear, I sat down with Dora and the department months ago and said, I know that there's this issue. Here's some solutions that I have for it. We talked about it. We agreed that this could be a reasonable solution depending on how it worked out. There are other mechanics in there that you folks said you're working out, interest and stuff like that when interest starts. So that's what happened. Then I drafted it. I sent it off to the department for comment. Received comment back from Ms. Self from some of the legal side of it. Didn't get as much comment back from you folks at that particular time. I know that you guys are really busy. So I just said I have to move it forward and bring it out here now. So that has happened. Sat down, talked. Now, like you say, we have to do something. We have to get this moving. So now it is here, forcing the hand for us to actually have this conversation, moving it from this place into your folks' hands, so then you can come back with any feedback that you may have. So that is the way that it goes. My philosophy is always to go and meet with the department, talk with them, figure out what will work for them, what won't work for them, and then come forth with any legislation that might affect that department. And that's exactly what I did. If this were in place 4 years ago, we would not have the problem that we have today. We would actually have this money in our pocket. My thinking right now is we should postpone. I'll work on an amendment that incorporates this and my language in there and bring it up at the next committee meeting. I know Ms. Ford wants to speak. If you do, then feel free to make a motion to postpone.
Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I'm going to discuss credit and debit. Your department is capable of accepting a debit card for pay-as-you-go, right? Pay-as-you-throw.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Now, with credit card, now, there's no cost to a debit card because it's basically cash. But with a credit card, how much do we have to pay to the various credit card companies? Because I understand, I think it's American Express charges a much higher processing charge than other credit card companies. So what do we pay to credit card companies? You don't have to name all the companies, but we pay a percentage of that because we're allowing credit cards. So what percentage are we paying?
I don't have the percentage with me, but we do pay a percentage, and so the more charges we receive on credit cards, there would be some cost associated with that.
Okay. Okay, that was my question. I yield.
Was there any more discussion? I know you were talking about maybe postponing this.
That's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I move to postpone to our next committee meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone to the next committee meeting.
Discussion.
Any discussion on the postponement?
Just do a voice vote.
We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's been postponed to the next council committee meeting. Thank you. And I will now hand over the chair to Mr. Kern.
Thank you. Let the record show that I am now taking back over the